Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about part 4 of the raid on GRAYMALKIN, which is a mini crossover event that extends through some of the X titles. And in this case, it's issue number 8 of Uncanny X-Men from the Ashes, written by Gail Simone and art by Javier Guerin. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So with that said, this issue opens with a flashback and a little bit of clarification of the relationship between the Warden and Scurvy. Because the slap that she gave him in the previous issue shook him to his very core, and when she doubted his ability to rival Charles's power, it almost broke him after all he had done for her. Because before all of this, before Scurvy became Scurvy, the Warden never doubted him. In fact, she even invited him onto her podcast so he could prove that not all mutants were dangerous. But during their conversation, the Warden had an answer for everything and even went as far as to flirt with him. Now just for some context, Scurvy looked completely different back then and went by the name Philip. But anyway, their relationship went from the podcast to the bedroom because she even slept with him. And during one of their late-night meetings, Philip told her every time he used his abilities it aided him, but that was when she said it was a sacrifice that had to be made. Now fast forward to today, and all Scurvy is used for is a glorified psychic weapon that was on full display against the two X-Men teams. And on a side note, I am so confused on why Juggernaut is being affected by this psychic base attack given that his helmet is made to block just that. But anyway, on the next page, we see Rogue completely going through it. Scurvy attack was so intense that she couldn't even think as a severe pain ripped through her head. And see, she wasn't the only one who was in this bad situation, for everyone around her was also being broken down. In fact, Cyclops even tried to order magic to teleport them all out of the chaos, but like I said before, it just wasn't going to happen. So as Rogue tried to force herself forward, Scurvy just stated that he had his orders and just dropped her like a rock. So with Rogue down, their only hope for survival arrives on the scene and states, "I wish I could say we'd met under better circumstances," and proceeded to call Scurvy Philip. Now this pissed Scurvy off big time. But regardless of his anger, Charles came face to face with Philip, and during their interaction, we get some revelations. And their conversation goes as follows. Charles starts by asking if they met before, to which Scurvy replies by saying no Charles, but he has been aware of him. Now this is a big deal, because this relatively nobody is currently holding Charles's X-Men in his thrall, which shouldn't be possible, because someone this strong should have been spotted by his Cerebro. But that was when Scurvy had to break the hard truth to Charles, namely that he wasn't the only one of his kind. For in his words, there were 5 of them, and that boy Harvey from issue number 1 was one of them before he passed. And this group of 5 was called the Avians, and they wanted no part in Charles's bloody wars. Now this right here was a shock to Charles, because he assumed that he would have at least sensed them. So with that explained, Scurvy then went on to tell Charles what Harvey died from, because as we seen in that chapter, Harvey died from a tumor on his brain stem, the same tumor that they all have including Charles himself. So by all intensive purposes, Charles is dying. So with that bombshell out there, Rogue, due to that massive hit by Juggernaut, regained her mind and was freed from Scurvy's psychic attack. Following that, the first move Rogue makes is to free Scott with a hell of a slap to the face. So with Cyclops free, Rogue gives him a rundown and states that Charles and Scurvy are currently having their psychic showdown, but regardless of that, Scurvy still manages to keep their teams tied down. So with that explained, Scott had to get on Rogue for bringing the kids into a war zone, to which Rogue shot back by saying those kids came to get back one of their own, and then, in a confusing comeback, she continued to say, "At least they don't have Max on their team," as if he wasn't a good guy during the last few years of Marvel Comics. So with both team leaders still at odds, Cyclops suggests that he will watch Charles and she should watch Scurvy, and as for their teammates, they both should pick one to wake up so that person can wake up the rest. Now Rogue picked Wolverine to be her person and Scott picked Magic to do the job. Following that decision, Scott then tells Rogue to keep half an eye on Charles, because from what he witnessed, Charles is not who she thinks he is. And while all this was going down, the astral form of both Scurvy and Charles continued their battle, and let's just say, their psychic attacks was on full display, as the area right outside of Inmate X's vault was just taking a beating. So as the big boys continued their unseen war, Wolverine just went around waking up everyone within his team. And on a side note, I like how Ransom showed Wolverine a little respect by apologizing for when he first met him. But anyway, while Wolverine was doing his job, he stumbled upon Magic, and during their conversation, Wolverine asked if she was still trying to fight them, to which she shot back that Cyclops had lowered their murder parameters down to 0. So from her perspective, they are completely good for now, and besides, the people that make up both of these teams with the exception of the kids are longtime friends anyway. So outside of the disagreement on how to deal with Charles, both squads never really had beef. So with everyone coming to, Nightcrawler and Psylocke show up and state that both of them have discovered a hidden truth, and that was Scurvy was the one manipulating their worst emotions telepathically, to begin with, to make them fight. Now with that said, that only explained a little of what was going on, because deep down, Rogue knew that some of their anger and violence was also because they were broken as a people. So as Rogue contemplated the reasons behind their current state, Charles just continued to battle with all he had, and asked Scurvy the question that was on everyone's mind, and that was who was the identity of Inmate X and why is he locked behind the massive door. Now Scurvy does give us a hint, saying can't Charles sense him? But anyway, on the last panel of this page, the Warden takes it into her own hands and asks for a rifle herself as we jump over to the next page. And once we are there, we see Calico talking with Ransom and Death Dream, and she was super excited to see them and thank them for coming. And as for Rogue, she wasn't sure what their next move should be, because the battle that was going on was one fought between psychics. But their temporary pause was put to an end as the Warden and her guards showed up in full battle rattle, ready to flex what weapons they had. And that was when Scott told her to read the room, because this all-star team was not about to just fall back without a fight. So with both sides having a good old-fashioned standoff, Rogue and Cyclops tell the Warden that they have too much power and too many weapons in this tiny place, and no matter what happens next, there will be losses. Following that statement, the Warden tells them to meet her trustees, and soon she will have dozens, and just to show her control over them, she tells Blob to recite their pledge. Now the pledge went as follows: I was born unworthy and am prone to evil. It was not my doing, but I cannot be saved. I am a mutant and the shame of our race. And not only did she make him do that out of a show of power, but she also told Rogue that they still have Sarah Gaunt incarcerated and threatened to let her loose. So with that threat out there, we then get an update on the battle between Charles's and Scurvy's fight, and of course, Charles laid hands on him and won the fight. So with that battle over, Cyclops told the Warden that it looked like her big gun, Scurvy, had been defeated, but that was when she corrected him and was like he wasn't her big gun. For the Warden's big gun is a network of sonic cannons equipped satellites that have 2 locations in its sights. So with that out there, the Warden cuts a deal with the X-Men and states they can take McCoy and Calico and leave with their lives, and she will keep Charles and her trustees. Now at first, Rogue didn't want to do that, until Charles told her it is not meant to be this time. For recent events have shown him his eternal regrets because he had hurt the innocent. And because of that, he believes he belongs there to atone for his sins. And then Rogue went on to say she appreciated that he was the first to believe in her. So with that decided, Rogue had no choice but to leave with the rest of her team under protest. And once they were safely away, Rogue hit Scott with a mean hook, and to my surprise, he got back to his feet and let out a massive optic blast that put Rogue on her ass. So with both Cyclops and Rogue back at each other's throats, their respectful seconds had to pull them apart. And at the end of this issue, the state of the X-Men was no better than it started, and if we were being honest, this issue ended with the teams more at odds than ever before. So with that said, this issue comes to an end with Inmate X still unknown. But anyway, down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.